another kind of thing that's kind of like tripping me up with it are when the passages get into a lot of like with science passages or legal passages, when they kind of get into like the terminology or the lingo and stuff that I've never heard before, and like I look at it and my brain just goes like scrambled. And then it takes me like a moment to like get back into the rhythm of like, okay, like this is what we're reading. But like I've found that in the questions and everything, you don't really have to understand what they're talking about with like those specific terms. I kind of wanted to ask if
Yeah.
you had any advice on that as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, those words are there to trip you up. They're there to scare you. And the problem is that attorneys often have to navigate areas they're not familiar with. Like, let's say you're a patent attorney, you're not a science expert, you're just a lawyer who happens to focus in that niche. But
Mm-hmm.
most science terminology is not going to be familiar to anyone other than scientists. So what you've got to get comfortable with is finding where they define that keyword or phrase in context, and then dumb it down for yourself by substituting that constantly.
Okay. Okay. That's a good idea. Like that's actually really good, because like half the time when I come across those terms, I'll just kind of go like in my head, I'll kind of just go like whatchamacallit, or like that's the the thingamajig, and then I'll come back to it. But
Yeah,
like
and you
going
could
in with
do it
the
that way, but here's another idea. You could also simplify it actually using some of the content. So, for example, I remember one passage where there are two political advocacy groups. One is relatively more liberal, one is relatively more conservative, but they
Mhm.
have their own terms. One was the Congress, one was the League. And so whenever I saw Congress, I would think, okay, that's the liberal one. Whenever I would see League, that's the conservative one, or
Mhm.
vice versa, whatever it was. But you could do the same thing with science terms. Like there's one famous passage about mites, like these little invisible bugs. And there are two different kinds of mites. And I would say you could do C and T for them, or
Mhm.
if those were the first letter of each of those terms, or you could use a characteristic of the mites and say, okay, these are the slower, these are the faster, or these are the older, these are the newer, whatever it is. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.